Hello, Dr. K here. This is video number 5. We're going to talk about mortgages. A mortgage is a really long-term loan. They used to be 30 years, and then they started altering the time periods. You can get a 15-year, 20-year. Now they're you get whatever you want. You want an 18-year? They'll give it to you. You just have to find the right company. Of course, the right percentage to suit your needs. So, what changes? Well, we need principal, which is the amount financed, which is different from the sale price. Because there's usually a sale price, which is the advertised price. Then there's a down payment. Not always, but typically. There's an annual interest rate, R. Then the number of monthly, it's monthly payments, so N is 12, it's always monthly. And then the time in years. And we got two different ways to solve these. We can do a formula, and it's the exact same formula for the monthly payment M that we used for the long-term loans in quiz number 4, video number 4. So I'll write it up so you can see it again. So that's the way you would enter it into the calculator. I know it's presented vertically, but you got to remember you got to divide the whole numerator by the whole denominator. So everything needs parentheses. Otherwise, the order of operations goes haywire. Okay, so that's the formula for mortgages. And there's also on the formula sheet at the very bottom on the second page, there's a monthly principal and interest payment. So principal and interest, P&I, P and I. Principal and interest, that's the main part of a mortgage, although they add in insurance, they add in taxes through the bank, so you can make everything in one payment, monthly payment. But for the purposes of the loan, the most important part is what they'll call P&I. So we'll take a real simple one. Let's say we're going to buy a house for $225,000. The annual interest rate is 5%. Monthly. And the time for this one is your old standby, 30 years. 30-year mortgage. Ball and chain. So we want to know the monthly payment. When they say monthly payment, they mean P&I. So if we use the formula, that's times T, N times T. Well, for 30 years, 12 months, that's 360. So we can just go ahead and put in negative 360. So when we do this in the calculator, we get $207.85. I always got to remember you got to be able to see those decimals. Okay, so that's the monthly P&I, and the bank will add on the taxes, the insurance payment, Those are just, we'll talk about those later, but for right now, we want to know the nuts and bolts of how to find P&I. Now, the other way I mentioned was to use the table. The table, it's similar to the table that we used for long-term loans, but that was per 100, and it was by percent and number of payments. This is by years because there's always 12, N is always 12, so they just go by years. So that would be 120, 180, 240, 300, 360 number of payments. Same idea. And then the rate is on the left. So rather than the top, the percentage is along the left-hand side. Now, there's not a complete table. You go to a lending bank institution, they're going to have all kind of percentages, and they'll figure it out because they're not going to lose any money on you, believe me. But this is a nice simplified table. For ours, we would look at 5%, the fifth row, and go over to all the way to the right to 30 years. And the number in there, and there's 5 decimal places, don't round it off. It's 5.36822. That's kind of like the V number that we use for long-term loans. Now, it says there monthly principal and interest payment per 1,000. So there's 225,000. Right? It's per 1,000, so you multiply this number by 225, and guess what you get? To the penny. To the penny. You can stop the video, check it out, make sure that they match up. Believe me, if there was a way that somebody could save money, they would use either way, but since they're both identical, no problems. So if we get a percentage later on that's not 0.0 or 0.5, then we're going to have to use the formula. But if the percentage ends in 0 or 0.5, then you can use this table. A lot of people like the table because it's straightforward. You can see there's only one multiplication once I identify the right number. As long as those two are correct, I avoid all of that long formula. So a lot of people like that, especially bankers. Okay, so let's say number 2, we want to buy a condo. We'll try this again. So the condo goes for $85,000. The rate is 6%. And it's 12 because it's monthly payments. This one's 15 years. It's 15 years because it's a smaller principal. You could reckon to pay it off quicker. You know, if you just divide 15 into this, you get close to what? 6 times, so 6,000. Roughly, if you just, without interest, it'd be somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 a year. You divide that by 12, you can see what you would approximately get. But then we have to add on all the interest. So by table, I'm sorry, by formula, now in this case, it's 15 years, so it's 180 months. Once again, if I have a negative 180, I don't need the parentheses. You can try it. You can either use the parentheses or not. It's just that when I draw this, it looks like a minus sign. But remember, that's a leading negative. It's the smaller negative sign on the calculator. So if you work this one out, if you want to stop the video and check it, you get $717.28. So that'll be the monthly P&I. Other things added on, but that's structurally how much the cost of the house directly to the bank for the loan. So by formula, by table, this is formula, by table, we would get, since it's an even percent, 6, I find 6, and this time I do 15 years, so it's the second column, it's 8.43857. Double check that, 43857, and now the number of thousands is 85. And you can double check this when you multiply that out. Guess what you get? To the penny, the exact same number. Okay? All right, so let me erase this. We'll do another one, and we'll add in some more ideas on down payments, points, stuff like that. Okay, so Tony's going to buy a condo that lists for $89,900. I see now I wrote P, and that's not correct, because that's the cost. So I jumped the gun there. So the cost is $89,900. There's a down payment of 15%. DN for down payment. Tony got the go-ahead for a 30-year mortgage at an interest rate of 11.5%. No points. So what are points? Points are an interest fee that you pay up front based on the size of the loan. And each point's 1% of the loan. And what points do is lower your R. So it's technically interest, but you're paying it up front. So you can lower your interest that you pay monthly. So remember, 1 point equals 1% of the principal. This is not the principal. This is the cost of the house. So what is the principal? Well, first of all, what's the down payment? Let's do it that way. So the down payment is 0.15 times 89,900. And if you use your calculator on that, you get $13,485. That's the down payment. That's 15% of the cost. So what's the amount of the mortgage? Which is another way of saying what's the principal? So the principal, some of you are probably already slick. You could say, well, if I multiply this by 15% to get the down payment, if I multiply this by 85%, I'll get the principal, which is true. Although since we have both numbers, we can just subtract. So it's the cost minus the down. So when you subtract, you get $76,415. So the cost minus the down payment gives you the principal. This is what you're borrowing from the bank. This is your principal. So what's the monthly payment? So since this one is on the table, 11.5% is on the, no it isn't. I take that back. So we have to use the formula. So the monthly payment is 76415. Remember, this is the principal. This is the cost. So I take that times, that's a pretty big percentage, as you probably recognize. And since it's 30 years, it's 360 payments. Right, NT, since it's 30 years, it's always monthly. Mortgages are always monthly, so that's 360 payments, monthly payments. So if you work this out, the monthly payment is $756.73. Okay? So here's the first question. We're going to go back to review simple interest. Watch this. This is how simple interest enters into this. It says the monthly payment the amount of the first payment applied to the principal. So to answer that, I first have to know how much of the first payment is interest. So I'll call it I1. And guess what? It's just PRT. So if you remember what we did before, at the end of the first month, you have the total principal that you started with. So that's 76415. The rate is the annual rate. That's 0.115. However, the time is 1 month, which is 1/12. Remember, T is in years for simple interest. So if I'm only getting interest for 1 month, then T is 1/12. I'm only going to use 1/12 of the rate. And when you do this, this gives you the interest for the first month. And the interest for the first month is $732.31. You can double check my arithmetic. Remember, I equals PRT. I put I1 because it's the first month. So this would be P1. That's the first original interest. So it says how much of first payment is applied to principal. So you can see almost all of it wipes out the payment. There's only how much left. So P2, I shouldn't say that, not P2. We better not call that P1. We'll just call it P star. Just so we don't want to call it the same P. So P star would be 756.73 minus the interest. And so if you subtract, you get $24.42. That's how much principal is deducted for the second payment. So in other words, for the second month, for P, I would take this amount minus $24.42. That would be my principal for the second month. And I would still have the same R and T because it's by month. And this is what happens. And you'll get an amortization schedule when you buy a house. It'll have all 360 payments listed. It'll tell you how much of each. The payments are all the same. They don't change unless you get that kind of a loan. But we're talking about a straight up loan where the percentages don't change. The rate doesn't change. It'll list the interest and the principal for each payment by month. And you can go down and look. It'll be for all 30 years. So crap's sakes, it's probably 8-9 pages long. You can also find them online. You can practice with it. If we were in class, I would show you how that works. It's called an amortization schedule. You're amortizing the loan. Okay, here's another question. We can finish up here. What's the total cost of the house? Aha! How are we going to figure that out? Well, the total cost of the house. Now, we're not talking insurance and taxes, but the total cost of the house in P&I. If we just take the monthly payment, and we multiply by how many payments there are, which we know is 360. And we add in what? What else do we have to add in? What else did Tony pay? He paid a down payment. So if I add up all the 360 payments plus the down payment, this is all of the principal and interest right here. So for a $90,000 condo Tony pays almost $300,000 over 30 years. You could say he got ripped off. But why was it so high? Because of the interest rate. That's too high. Right now, the interest rates are down 3%. You can get them less than 3%. So you can imagine the price would be a lot lower because you're not paying a lot to use the money. You're just using their money for 30 years, and so they're charging. That's how it goes. And, back in the 80s, 1980s, this was what was going on. There was interest rates that were even higher than this. You could buy a house, 12, 13, 14. I remember them as high as almost 16%. And people were doing it because they wanted to buy the house. So what's the total interest paid? Well, that's pretty easy. You just take total interest. You take how much the total cost was and subtract the principal. The principal is the cost of the house because included in all the P&I payments plus the down payment, he paid off the $89,900. And so the total interest that he pays is $196,007.80. So these are typical questions that you're going to see on quiz number 5. I'm going to end this video, and then I'll do a video 5B, and I'll have a couple more examples with a lot more involved so you can answer questions. And right now you have the nuts and bolts for the P&I. And you introduced a couple of new things, down payment, points. The amortization schedule, you can play around with that. You can go to almost any bank, your bank, and look at the loan schedule that they have. Play around with it. Just pick some numbers and see what happens. It'd be fun. Okay, I'll see you on the next video. Dr. K, out.